Okay. We good? Good evening. We call this meeting to order at 6:17 PM. Tonight we have present directors Teitler, DeFreitas, After, Ramirez, and myself, meaning we have a quorum. Thank you to our interpreter Astrid. Would you please share the interpretation instructions with our participants? Good evening. We call this meeting to order at 6:17 PM. Tonight we have present directors Teitler, DeFreitas, After, Ramirez, and myself, meaning we have a quorum. Thank you to our interpreter Astrid. Would you please share the interpretation instructions with our participants? Good evening. We call this meeting to order at 6:17. Twice. Should we assume just resetting? Can we proceed?
Betsy and Jasmine, are your microphones on?
Are we good? Yeah? Okay. Thank you. Are we set for interpretation? Yeah, okay. All right. The first business in order is the approval of the agenda. Directors, are there any proposed changes to the agenda? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Our next agenda item is our opening celebrations and updates by our superintendent, Dr. Anna Cole.
Okay, good evening. A couple of updates. First, related to our strategic priority number 2, rigorous learning for all. Senior capstone presentations are picking up. And I want to congratulate the seniors who have finished their capstones and those who are nearing the finish line. A big thank you to the community mentors who are providing so much more than technical assistance on these projects. Last night at Basalt High School, I got to hear about community mentors who included an automotive mechanic and small business owner, a local barber, an alum from Roaring Fork School District, a child care center director, and one of our own high school athletic coaches who have volunteered countless hours to mentor and support Roaring Fork School District students. It takes a village, and we're so grateful for the community mentors and their engagement with the Capstone Project as a culminating learning experience for seniors. So if you haven't caught any of those capstone showcases, we'll try to make sure you all know about them, but they're really, really fun to hear our seniors and hear all about what they were working on. Additionally, related to strategic priority number 3, operational excellence, really want to thank all of our operational teams who helped us forecast and plan for last week's storm. And those facilities and operational teams who have routinely since then begun their workdays at 2 a.m. this week to make sure that parking lots and sidewalks are clear when schools open in the morning. And also thanks to staff and families who were really flexible in responding to the snow day. One of the things that we realize about snow days or delays is that we're guaranteed to frustrate about 50% of families, which we usually do. We know there are issues with PTO and staff and snow days, and we're working through those challenges, but are grateful for everybody's patience and collaboration. It feels like every snow day or every delay, we learn something new and a system that needs to be tightened up, and this one was no different. If anybody's been on our website lately, additionally related to strategic priority number 3 and operational excellence, and strategic priority number 4, student-centered partnerships and communication, I would like to thank Christina Vargas, who's our bilingual communication specialist. Christina has worked really hard with our website platform and the folks there, and with our school communication leads to really update and freshen up our website. She's working through every school to get their homepages updated as well, adding new features, images, and she's just doing a great job to freshen up our look just in time for kindergarten enrollment. And so big thanks to Christina for that leadership. Also want to welcome this week, related to strategic priority number 2, rigorous learning for all, specifically our initiatives around CTE professional pathways. We are really excited to welcome 3 new teachers to our early childhood education team. They actually are high school students from Bridges High School, Roaring Fork High School, and Glenwood Springs High School. There are 7 more applications in the pipeline. These are high school students who, through our CTE pathway work, are starting to work on their credentials, and they're going to be employed by our early childhood team. They're working on getting their early childhood teacher credential through the PDIS system. They're getting all the proper training. Down the road, we're going to be working with CMC so they can get college credits for the work and take kind of ECE 101, 102 courses. They're being paid. And so big thanks to Lori Brumbaugh from the ECE team, to the Early Childhood Center directors, as well as instructional facilitator and CTE coordinator Mitch Foss for facilitating these critical career pathways. I'm a little biased, like we're excited about automotive and we're excited about health pathways, but to really start an education and teaching pathway feels really exciting. So really delighted to welcome some new faculty to the early childhood education team. Want to let our community know that preschool and K-12 registration is now open online. There are in-person preschool opportunities coming up in March when folks can visit the early childhood centers and get support with the registration process. Big thanks to our student data team and registrars who are working to support preschool and K-12 registration. And there was a lot of work from the preschool, the Family Resource Center, and the data team who really rebuilt our preschool enrollment process now that we're heading into year 2 with the Universal Preschool Program. So lots of wins there, and thanks to that team. And then finally, just want the community to be aware that Anastasia, the musical, opens this Friday at Columbus Springs High School. The show will run this weekend and next, and that's it.
Thank you. The next business in order is the superintendent report, which will include 2 presentations, an update on our strategic plan from Dr. Cole and a panorama student survey update from Dr. Park and Cami Newmeyer.
For tonight's superintendent report, we are really delighted to be focusing on our strategic plan and on some of our student survey data. So want to provide the board and our community with an update on the strategic plan, where we're at with implementation of initiatives. We did discuss this during our work session, so we'll stay pretty high level here. We are very close and they're in production, but some of the marketing materials around our strategic plan, some new posters should be out next week or in the next week or 2 in our schools and in some of our buildings. So we're delighted to have this better displayed and available for the community and for staff and students. So excited to launch those marketing materials. As the board is aware, we have 5 priorities: students first, which really focus on strengthening sense of belonging, student attendance, engagement, representation, and participation in activities and school leadership. Those initiatives are on track. Executive Director of Schools, Joel Hathaway, leads a lot of this work with our deans of culture. We're starting to see some pretty strong trending data in terms of discipline moving in the right direction, of a reduction of in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension related to this priority. So really grateful for the leadership of Joel Hathaway and our deans and school leaders there. Priority number 2, rigorous instruction for all. Assistant Superintendent Dr. Park leads a lot of this work. Initiatives are on track with this work that really is driving around student achievement and growth. Operational excellence. We have a couple of pieces here that are on a bit of a delay. I would name specifically the equity audit. What we're waiting for is that final presentation to the board. So we had kind of a mid-year check-in with Promise 54, the partner that did that. What the board is waiting for and can anticipate March 12th, which will then be back on track, is the kind of final district assessment of what we learned from that equity audit, what we're doing, how that will integrate with our strategic plan and work moving forward. So that will get turned to green. It's just on a bit of a delay. And then additionally, some of the systems integration around district office support, really what we wanted to do was strengthen some of our internal systems. We have a lot of data platforms that are used across HR and finance that need some more streamlining. Because of some of our budget challenges and some turnover in the district office, we have been delayed on a lot of that systems integration and upgrades. So that work's moving a little more slowly. This year, we're a little bit behind where we wanted to be because the team's really been focused on more of the complex budget challenges we've been talking a lot about. In terms of priority number 4, a lot of work here under the leadership of our Director of Student Family Services, Kelly Medina, to really codify kind of the best practices and how we want to partner with families. That work is in development. It's on track. By the end of the year, we will have a district toolkit for partnering with families. It's a toolkit meant for staff, schools, leaders, that then the next 4 years of this initiative will be really under Kelly's leadership, helping schools step up and hit those best practices consistently. So lots of work there. Looking forward, I think one of the key metrics here that we're measuring is data from the parent survey that will come out this spring. So we'll hear more about that in the coming months. And then finally, in terms of thriving team, a lot of work here as we want to improve staff recruitment, retention, and systems to recruit and retain a staff that reflects the diversity of our kids and community. The board will hear about this plan. We worked with Promise 54 on a staff recruitment and retention plan. You will hear from Chief Platt at the March 12th board meeting about that plan and how our HR team's leadership will move this work forward. So lots of stuff on track. I think derailed predominantly because of financial challenges where we've seen things slowing down. One of the really exciting things, and the board spent some time on this during the work session, but as promised, it's been delayed, but it's finally out, is the initial launch of our data dashboard. It is now embedded into the district strategic plan webpage. So if you're watching at home, jump online, look up the Roaring Fork School District strategic plan, and you'll see a couple of ways to click on a link to access the data dashboard. There's a ton of information. We are still refining the language and some of the visualizations here. So we'll, in the coming weeks, have areas where folks can share feedback on this. But the real purpose of this tool was to strengthen accountability and transparency as we work towards the very ambitious targets in our 5-year strategic plan. We wanted to make sure that we're all looking at the same outcomes and tracking progress as our initiatives continue to be implemented. So very exciting dashboard, lots of information there. Really encourage folks to jump on, and delighted to finally be able to bring this before the board. So what's happening next in terms of strategic plan? Of course, we continue to implement, we continue to work on the priorities that we wanted to get done this year. We are, again, as I mentioned, the posters will be in schools and district facilities very soon. They're being printed. Additionally, in response to some of the pushes that we've heard from community members, we're working on tailored communications really for Spanish-speaking families related to our strategic plan. We fully recognize that that plan was written really for our staff to drive. And we recognize that a lot of families are struggling to access and understand, what does this plan mean for my student and my family? And so we are working with some partners and with some of our advisory councils to tailor additional communications about the strategic plan for Spanish-speaking families, for families to be able to answer that question. How is this going to impact my students' learning and achievement and well-being? So that's still to come and in development. And then we're also planning additional tools for the data dashboard to support families in navigating the dashboard and understanding how to get access to information. So still a lot of work on that. We have a district strategic leadership team that meets monthly, and we're holding each other accountable to the implementation of the metrics or implementation of the initiatives. That group, it's hard to believe that it's February. We'll actually start talking about year 2 and refinement of the initiatives in year 2 in the coming months. So exciting to be here talking to you about the strategic plan, and that to be our focus tonight. Okay, we'll turn it over to Dr. Park to talk a little bit about the Panorama Student Survey, and then we'll have time for questions.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'm going to, sorry, this is really hard. I'm going to debrief the student survey that we administered this winter. Wanted to ground this in why the survey matters for us, even though we have been administering the Panorama Student Survey for a number of years. We did want to draw a clear connection to our strategic plan goals, and it's if you remember the Thrive, Learn, and Launch big categories. Part of this At the foundational level, we do care about students' experience in our schools and how they feel in both their class and in school. And so this is a student perception data that we gather. Students take the survey both on how things feel in their classroom and how things feel in their school. And so you can see here an excerpt of the annual goals that we are striving for related to the Panorama Survey and also the biannual Healthy Kids Colorado Survey. Specifically, we call out the belonging metric that's in the Panorama Survey. There's many more questions than just belonging, but this is one that we think is a really helpful indicator to know about the overall experience of students in their school. So I think this is familiar to a lot of you, but we have given the survey for a number of years, and it's helpful to see changes over time for schools. It's also helpful to see changes over time for staff. The Panorama Survey is widely used nationally, and so we're also able to have some national comparisons to similar school levels. It is randomized and confidential so that teachers don't know which students responded and what their specific responses were, but it is helpful information for them to get. Same thing with schools as well. There are two different surveys. One is on the school and one is on the teacher. And so these listed categories are the ones that are included. We'll just skip over that. This is the same set of categories. I want to talk about response rates a little bit. So you'll see the historical response rates, and you'll see that there's crew, school, and teachers. So there used to be 3 surveys that were administered. We opted not to administer the crew survey this year just because over time it has changed. As you might remember last year's responses, there are a lot of students, especially in our high schools, because it's called advisory now or tutorial, they say, I don't know what crew is. So that was confusing for kids. And so there are still ways that internally schools are tracking how kids feel about crew. But we did administer the school survey, the student survey about their school, and the student survey about their teachers. We did also opt not to administer the kindergarten through 2nd grade survey. We heard unanimously from leaders and many teachers that it did not seem like our kindergarten through 2nd graders actually understood the questions, and it did not feel the best use of time. And so we administered through 3rd through 12th grade. In previous years, it was mixed whether a 5th grader in a middle school took the 6th through 12th survey or they took the 3rd through 5th survey. So this year, we did have every 5th grader, whether they were in an elementary school or a middle school, take the 3rd through 5th survey. So that's consistent. And one other unfortunate piece is the belonging category, perhaps the most important category, was inadvertently left off in the December administration, and we did not realize until January. And so we then did a one-off administration of the belonging survey questions in January. But I did want to name that the initial completion rate in December with the other 4 categories was 85.5%. The completion rate for the belonging portion, which was separately administered in January, was 71%. Part of that is because it was a shorter window that we gave because we were trying to make sure that we could incorporate the results. And in December, schools did a really robust effort to get as high completion as possible, and it just was not feasible to do the exact same amount of chasing down after kids to do that. But 71% is not a bad percentage completion given that circumstance. So in our 3rd through 5th grade overall increases, you'll see sort of summary here. And just a note, all of the district reports and the school reports will be uploaded to our website after tonight's meeting. So we have some increases in the valuing of school and learning strategies and grit. The school belonging does have that asterisk. So there was a decline, and what's hard to know is what factors actually contribute to that decline. And so that asterisk is there, not because it doesn't matter, but because I think it's important to understand the context of that response. And then, of course, the question about if you have a problem in school, how difficult is it for you to get help from an adult? It had a decline of about 3 percentage points too. And that tends to be something of the lowest positive response there. You can see the overall categories for each one. And the percent favorable, as a reminder, the agree and strongly agree categories are included in the percent favorable, but not somewhat. Somewhat and below is included in the non-favorable. So you can see the percentage and the increase there. If there is not a compared to others nationally metric, it's because that's not one of the categories or questions that's included in nationally from Panorama, but it might be one that we as a school district decided to include. What's exciting is that in this grit category, from 2019, 23, and 24, you can see that we've increased to 70%, and that is above the pre-COVID national percentile levels. So it's one of the things as we think about how long or in what areas does it take to quote bounce back from COVID, where are we here? And so in the area of grit, that has increased. So you can see that over time. In school learning strategies, you can see a similar results here, where we've returned to the pre-COVID national percentile, which is why the 2019 is there versus the 2024, up at 75th percent. Our 6th through 12th students have an overall increase, which is encouraging because typically in our older students, we have found our younger students were happier, but I think the K-2 maybe inflated that a little bit previously, so we have that here. But what's great is in every category, there is an overall school increase for 6th through 12th grade in a number of areas. And so that's really encouraging because typically it has not been that case. And similarly here, you can see across the board, aside from belonging, which stayed flat at 0 with that asterisk of the time it was administered, but there are some nominal percentage increases between last year fall and this year fall. And so that's encouraging to see as well. And I think this is a testament to a lot of the work and intention, of course, that our schools are constantly putting on, eager to see the results, digging into them, thinking about their intentional strategies and priorities that they've set in terms of improving student belonging, participation, how much they value the school and learning. These are the results with about teacher. And so remember, there were two. One was about the school and one was about the teacher. And so we have several declines in terms of pedagogical effectiveness, and then the classroom teacher relationships, and then the rigorous expectations and climate. And these are concerning. And when we think about, I think it's a couple things. When we think about, we want to have this feedback from kids, and I think this is a really great indicator that kids know when a lot is expected from them, and they know when little is expected from them. So I think this is really honest and important feedback to get, and has sparked several conversations also with our leaders and their teachers as they're examining this data. What's encouraging is that students are saying that they are more focused on activities in class. Of course, this is self-reported. We don't administer a teacher about student survey. So this is reported from the perspective of the student. This is just the overall change between last year and this year in the relevant categories for a teacher. The student-teacher relationships is concerning. Of course, there's a decline because we prioritize that a lot, and there's a lot of work done on it. And so this is an area too, which there's a lot of digging into. It varies, of course, by school and by teacher, but I spoke about the fact that school leaders and teachers have dug into their individual results. They've had follow-up conversations, especially if there's a concerning decline or just it's low, even if it wasn't a decline and stays persistently low, just to talk through how the teacher is working on that. And then for our 6th through 12th graders, an overall increase in all areas, just about the teacher, again, which is great. There's a 7 percentage points increase on the classroom climate, an 8 percentage point increase on the engagement, which is really exciting and robust increases here. The pedagogical effectiveness, although it continues to be low on the percentile, there's a 3 percentage point increase. And I think it continues to hold the bar high for how well a student feels their teacher is at teaching. And so this is, again, questions might be my teacher teaches things in a way that I understand, or takes time to explain things clearly. I mentioned this and I wrote this in our staff memo. These results came out in January. Since then, there's been debriefs that schools have led with their schools. Individual debriefs schools have led with their teachers as they got their own results as well. In many cases, especially when there were concerning results, there are individual plans where the teacher has said, here's the things I want to work on, and continue to monitor that experience through this spring.
Thank you. So we'll have 2 minutes each to ask questions and 5 minutes as a board. Director Teitler, you want to start?
Sure. Thank you for all this information, and I really appreciate the dashboard going live. That's a really positive outcome. So thank you about that. Do you have any ideas on the school data on why our elementary or our 3-5 data compared nationally is much higher than our 6-12 data compared nationally?
Can you ask that question one more time?
Sure. If you look at the 3-5 survey on students about the school.
Mhm.
And if you look to compare to others nationally, there's all of these like 80 to 99th percentile.
Mhm.
And then when you look at the 6-12 in that same category, where lots of like 40 or 30 or 60 or 50 percentile comparatively.
Mhm.
Do you have any thoughts on why the students are saying the elementary, why the perception is, at least from this survey data, that the elementary schools are doing better than the non-elementary schools?
Aside from the fact that I think our elementary schools are great, we have great staff and teachers and happy places. I'm not sure because don't know the range of schools and places and states in which the panorama survey is taken, but all of that national percentile is taken from there. And so I don't know that I could speak to, I can speak, I think, to here, and it's helpful to see it comparatively nationally. I guess by comparison, if then that's saying that, our secondary schools, which have a kind of in the average, is not the same. No, I mean, I don't have an answer for why it's at the highest percentile. I think it's good. I think it's good to see that. But I don't know enough about all the other schools that nationally that take the survey to have an answer for that. I do think something that is the national percentile is one thing that's helpful, but I actually think, comparatively across the district or year over year, is really informative for
Mhm.
school leaders.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Director After?
Great, thanks. I have, most of my questions are about the panorama survey because we talked about the dashboard extensively in the work session. I'm curious if we can, if you can help us understand on slide 25, the pedagogical effectiveness in the orange category compared to nationally for, I think, 6 to 12. What's your read on that? Especially because on the slide previous, it said, it indicates that we had increases in that category. So I'm just curious about your take on that.
Yeah, we did we had a 3 percentage points increase in that category. And for years, actually, as I'm looking at the historical results starting around 2015, because that's when we first started. I think this is the 10th year that we've given the panorama survey. It's been between 74%, 76% positive and 71% positive. It's for 10 years. So it's all stayed around the same. In terms of the increase, I can tell you that the questions that had the highest increase were: one, how well can this teacher tell whether or not you understand a topic? That had a 4 points increase, as well as how comfortable are you asking this teacher questions about what you're learning in his or her class? And so whether there's some correlation there with the relationships and climate that's there, those are the 2 that had the biggest increase. The other ones had moderate increase between 2 and 3 percentage points. So if I'm looking at that, I would say those are the biggest pushes there.
Okay. Do we survey charter schools for panorama?
Not in the panorama.
Okay.
I don't think we did that. Oh, sorry. No, they did not.
Okay. Neither.
They did not, no.
Okay. Just a few more questions. I was struck by your comment on slide in the beginning. Sorry, let me get to it. Oh, I don't have a number, but the slide on response rates, 15. Your comment about crew and deciding not to survey based on crew. What is that? Does that say? Does that tell us anything about our thinking around crew's effectiveness?
No,
As you
there
said,
just
that's-
wasn't a way to have some schools take the crew survey and some not. And so like we couldn't assign, the 6 schools or the 7 schools that like have crew really embedded as part of their work to give that survey and not have the other schools, not have that be assigned as a survey with our other schools. And so what ended up happening, especially as we looked last year, is that I don't know that it had as helpful information as it would be when schools are serving their own students internally about how much they like crew. We got, it's interesting because we get, helpful information from middle schoolers, elementary schoolers, because it's already like, embedded as a core part of their day. They know what it is. Our high schools use different terms for it now, and there are, where the spirit of crew is still present, but the massive confusion it caused because they're like, I don't have crew, but it's like, no, tutorial is it, or this is it. And so that's also just a reason why it wasn't necessarily giving us helpful information. And it's work to implement, execute these surveys. So we're really trying to be thoughtful about how we can streamline. And it made sense to continue to give the school survey and teacher survey.
Okay.
But it's not an indicator that we're like, trying to get rid of crew.
Okay. All right. On the question on slide 16, the concerning decline in 3 to 5 on health and wellness. If you have a problem in school, how difficult is it for you to get help from an adult? Since you've pulled that out as a concerning decline, what's your read on that data point? Like, what's the significance of that?
I guess the significance is that typically, our younger students tend to have a positive view, more positive, I think, view of school and experience, and then, dips in middle and then comes back in high school. I think we saw that trend last year. We just don't think it is okay that a student would feel it is difficult for me to get help from an adult. I think it's different to say, I'm bored in class, right? There could be different interest levels of students, but any student should be able to say, I can get help from an adult when I need it. And so it's concerning that for all the work we're doing on student belonging and making sure students know where their resources are and things like that, to have that decline is a challenge. So I think it's worth pulling out.
What are some of the things you're thinking about doing to try to increase that number?
I mean, I think it varies by school in terms of how much this has increased or decreased. So this is just the aggregate across the district. And so one of the things I'd mentioned is when we look at the teacher survey, right? That's one way. Like, can we look individually? Is that actually impacting the number? Like, do we see numbers that say students can consistently say, I can ask my teacher for help, or I can find an adult for help? So trying to really triangulate, like, where is the issue coming? Sorry, I don't want to say issue. Where is the biggest challenge or opportunity to address coming from?
I would also name that, we know that having a trusted adult is a protective factor for students and risky behaviors. And so, this, to Dr. Park's point about why this really matters to us and we're lifting it up, is because we expect that every student, that we will be cultivating relationships so every student will have a trusted adult at school. So when we're not saying that, that's an issue.
Yeah.
Two of the things that are being piloted across some of our schools this year, led by the student services team, which is a district-wide team that really focuses on kind of social emotional well-being. We have a couple of schools that are going to pilot a social emotional screener that is not anonymous, that would actually help us see students who are at risk of that their well-being, their social emotional well-being is at risk, and that we can intervene more consistently, right? Like, for kids who would respond very negatively to this question through Panorama, we have no way of following up with them. And so we're currently piloting some social emotional screeners that we've never really used as part of our preventative work. And I think that will help us with this kind of a metric. The other thing some of our schools are doing that have this kind of screener is they're actually internally creating lists. They're doing their own screenings of, do you have a trusted adult at school? And if kids are listing no, they're actually curating lists of who those kids are and divvying up among a faculty who's grab 5 of those kids that you know that are in your classes and start building that relationship, because when we take the screener again, we want to see that number drop. And so we are beginning to see a lot more targeted work around trusted adults at schools that I think will help us address this. They're pilot projects right now, so we're watching some of the schools go out ahead with these screeners and with these interventions. And then that information will come back to student services team to see if we need to do some more district initiatives on that. Makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And I don't have any other questions. I wanted to say that the data dashboard is awesome, and sorry for not leading with that. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to dig in, and I hope other folks do as well. And it's just really impressive, rigorous work. I know there's still some tweaks and kinks you're working out, but it's very cool.
Director Ramirez?
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure, so are all elementary and middle schools doing crew
Yes,
and they call it crew? Okay. And that does not include the church school.
correct. They call it something else.
No,
Unit, I think it's called Unidad at Two Rivers,
Yes.
and then there's well, it's called maybe. They do something similar, but it's not called crew. As far as I know.
I know, I feel like maybe we already answered this, but did they do this survey? Okay. I did want to ask, what was the last time of this, I don't know, the survey was updated? I heard you say that we started doing this 10 years ago, so how often do we update it? Make sure we're asking the right question.
We reviewed the questions as a district leadership team last year. So all of them in the student survey, parent survey, the district survey, the staff survey. We did ask leaders, what are like the 3 to 5 questions you always look at as a school leader? Which 3 to 5 do you never look at? Because we're trying to determine, can we just delete some or do we phrase things differently? We did ask, if you could ask a better question, what would it be? And so we got some really helpful feedback and information with the intent that we would redo all the questions on the survey. And then actually, there's some technical components that if we were to, go from 30 questions to 10 questions, it would actually pretty significantly impact the statistical reliability of the questions and the categories. And so there are some where we can totally customize a survey. It would mean that we start with 0 historical data because we'd be completely changing the survey. So it's possible to do. We decided this wasn't the exact right time to do it. But we review the questions each year. I mean, this year too, when creating the rosters for it, I sent out all the questions, say, these are the questions, just so you know. And so people are aware of what the questions are. I do think the work of prioritizing the right questions is helpful. There's some small tweaks we made, like making sure the 5th graders are taking the same all taking the 3rd through 5th survey. And so there's some operational things we've updated.
So as a board member, I would love to see a revision. I think that we have had some questions that have been very helpful. I think just especially as we've gone through and had historical data. I do wonder sometimes when we review this, like what's missing, because it feels like we're not really asking either like the question that could help us with our strategic plan or outcomes or belonging, for example. And so I do wonder, what that would entail for our team to decide that we want to go ahead and try a different set of questions that 10 years from now maybe could help us towards our strategic plan that we have adopted recently. And what are we going to do to ensure that this next go around when the survey goes out, that all of the questions are on the same survey? We don't divide it into 2.
Yep, the step is that I'm downloading all the questions before they're finalized and double checking that they're there. It was a glitch on Panorama's end, which we did not catch again until we were actually looking at the results and realizing that. And it was an anomaly this year.
I also wanted to ask, so in reviewing the data dashboard and the survey, I did want to ask, what of this work, and if you guys could share, is tied to the LAP
Of the Panorama survey work,
of the survey and the data dashboard? Really, you guys, the presentation, just that for you guys.
I mean, part of it is a lot of the work in having deans of culture at our middle and high schools has really directly supported, and of course, in partnership with a lot of other people in the school staff, our attendance or student discipline metrics. The reduction in numbers is, I will say, due to the ton of the work that the deans and leaders are doing and Joel's work with them as well. That's not necessarily always the visible work, but that is work that's been really important. The student belonging, you heard a little bit about the student leadership groups at our high schools who are informing and really giving the input on the right questions to ask students about their participation in clubs and activities and what leads them to do it more and what not. The work in terms of pedagogical effectiveness. So all the work that we're putting into coaching and instructional expectations and visions of excellence should be reflected in how clear students are and how much they believe that their teacher really knows what they're teaching and make sure they understand. And so there's a lot of these questions here actually from that student perception we do want to improve. We called out a few of them in our strategic plan. Belonging is a big one there. Because that's like one of the questions that I know there are a lot of other questions and factors underneath it, but it's one of the ones that we really intently monitor.
I also wanted to ask, so I did notice on the presentation that there were some strategic priorities that were not met. So it didn't list every single one of them. Do you share a little bit about why that?
Sure. When we launched the strategic plan with the 5 priorities and then all the initiatives underneath, some of those initiatives are meant to launch in year 2 or 3. And so just for simplicity's sake, we really only lifted up the initiatives that were meant to launch this year. And so when you see a missing 2.2, it's because it will kick off next year. The ones we did include initiatives that were targeted to start this year, but have been pushed back. So for example, in operational excellence, you'll see a finance core model work that we thought we would launch this year long before we realized the enormity of the financial challenges. And so we have pushed that one back, but there's a bunch that'll start next year.
Yeah, and what was the date? You said marketing materials at the end.
You know, I think the posters are printing this week. So we're hoping by next week we'll see them. They'll be in here, a couple in this building, and then big posters in all the buildings with some of the smaller posters as well out and about.
By March 3rd, we're assuming all of will have.
We're hoping, yeah. To be honest, we were really hoping that they would be right behind you tonight and didn't quite hit that, so.
Director DeFreitas?
Thanks. Just echoing appreciation all the board members have expressed for the work following through on the data dashboard, struggle with that one. And also the survey. I really appreciate the continuity over the last 10 years. Historical data tells a much clearer story, and I think that that's really valuable. So I would just encourage caution as you change and adjust questions, making sure that we don't lose the threads that are directive in that way. I think I just have a quick question. I mean, what was Chief Park, what was your walkaway, your first thing when you saw this data, either a surprise or an aha, that makes sense, or a cringe? What was your biggest takeaway when you first got this data in front of you?
I mean, aside from belonging not being there. Literally, I was like, if it was any other category, we probably wouldn't actually give it in January, but it was the most important category. I mean, I think the declines in the 3rd through 5th grade are just different. I mean, and I think the surprise, and it's pleasant, right, of the improvement in 6th through 12th. Because we typically see it flat or a little bit declined, and, you know, the narrative has been like, oh, you know, when they get into middle and high school, then they're less happy than they are in elementary. So, I would say that the declines in the third through fifth grade, both about the student and the teacher.
Mhm. Kind of on that note, I thought it was interesting. Do you feel like you are able to find any value in sort of tangential learning? These are questions aimed at students about student experience, but do you feel like there's context about teachers and the role of leadership that's being spoken through these answers in any way, whether it's efficacy or satisfaction of classroom teachers? I mean, thinking about the question that asks about, does your teacher look excited to be at work? That was a decline this year. Are there other learnings around not just looking at students from this for you?
I think there are. I think a question like that, how excited does your teacher seem to be, is an indicator of other things. But I think I would not be able to reliably say, and that is the reason why, or this is the reason why. I do think it's personal. And so that's part of the conversations where, especially that, or my teacher seems excited to see me, or my teacher wants to help me. Like, those are very like personal in the classroom, because when we look at the school level, you can see the variance by teachers as well. And so I think it often is individual. I have wondered, right? Like, are there other external factors? Of course, there are a lot of things happen all the time, but I don't think I can make an assumption that I know exactly what it is. It is interesting for sure.
And then just one more perspective, sitting behind this desk, where the one thing I have to do is pay attention to your presentation and read the things in front of me. And I even sometimes struggle to do that. When we look at data and we see a story and we think, oh, here's a problem and I can see a solution from all the way over here, just recognizing whenever we push that solution out into a school or a classroom, it's one more thing on a list of an enormous list of to-dos for professionals with our students these days. And so just really carefully weighing, like for us, we're like, what's your answer? What are you going to do next? What are you going to fix? And recognizing that all of those fixes, at least for a while, just look like a lot more work. And we're struggling with an immense workload for our teachers right now.
For sure. And I don't want to roll out 20 new initiatives every year, but it's really like, let's name the things that are going really well and keep doing them. And identify where it's not, and talk through how we make that better.
I also wanted to start with just appreciating the data dashboard, which I'm very excited about. More than
Chills?
more than- I don't know what it was. It was like, oh, like I can't believe this is actually here. So that's just very, very exciting to me. And I would encourage the public to really dig in there and start poking around, because having that accessible to our families, our community, I think is just incredible. I'm also really appreciative of the efforts to make this data more useful to this board in terms of the fifth grade switch. I think eliminating the K2 was a good move. And even this presentation where we're comparing it to national numbers, and so that we really have something to compare it to, because when you just see numbers in a vacuum, they don't mean much. My one question is, do you attribute the declines in K5, which we saw decreases about, school, and I think 2 of the 5 metrics, and then 4 of the 5 or 6 about teachers. Do you attribute that to removing the K2 data? Because it would seem to me that the K2 data would have been much more positive out of that group. And when historically we've had it be K5, could that explain those jumps in this year one?
I think it could. I actually don't want to answer until I take a look again at the last year or previous years and make sure it's not broken down into K2, 3, 5, and 6, 12. No, because K2 was shown separately
It was shown
from 3,
separately.
5, yeah. Or sorry, and 3, yep, and questions are different
Okay.
on that paper survey. So I would have loved that if that was the case. Yeah. Actually.
And do you think that including more fifth graders would have had an impact? Because we obviously shifted this.
Right, because we do have fifth graders at two of our, fifth grades at two of our middle schools. And so, and when we looked at it by level, elementary, middle and high, we saw that there was an elementary and then middle and then high. That could be something actually, because previously they had taken the 6-12 survey. The fifth graders in the middle schools had taken the 6-12
Right.
survey, but
And it just surprises me because they do seem, it seems to be pretty consistent with the 3-5s. It seems like there's something going on there. And we made these shifts, so.
And it's still a concern, right? Like whether
Mhm.
it's a fifth grader in middle school,
Oh,
fifth
yeah.
grader in elementary school, it matters. And so, that's a good point.
That was it for me. Thank you so much for taking feedback from the board into consideration, switching things on your own, all of those things. I just think that it's the utility of the data this year and in this presentation is really, really wonderful. So we'll have 5 minutes for open questions from the board, comments.
I just had one. Can you say again, Dr. Park, how and when people can see their school level data on the website?
It should be posted tonight or tomorrow. We wanted to wait until we have this meeting,
Yep.
But they're ready to go. So the individual school reports will be posted on the website.
Okay, and so people can just go to their school website or to the.
No, just go to the district website and then there's, they can put in panorama actually in the search bar and it'll show the family survey, student survey. And so when they click on the student survey, it'll take them to the list of the district overall and then each individual school report.
I think, just to follow up on direct after, we did talk about it during the work session for the strategic plan data dashboard. It would be helpful to include a link for school view. I think that, if we can direct parents to that, it would be, I think, tremendously helpful for anybody looking for information on any of our schools. But if we don't have a link for panorama surveys, especially because we utilize them so much, I think we should also add that. Not necessarily here, but at least on our who we are tabs. I think it's always helpful to have something where families can easily access it or anybody looking for information.
So you're talking about a link to the page where the panorama surveys live in our website? Okay.
Anything else? Thank you both.
Thank you.
At this time, we would welcome members of the public who have signed up to address the board. There are 0 speakers signed up tonight. The board typically allots 45 minutes for public comment. To respect the time of all who are present, speakers are asked to limit their remarks to 3 minutes or less. Members of the public who wish to share their views with the board may always do so in writing at any time. For this evening's public comment, we received 2 written comments. So we do not have any public speakers this evening. The next business in order is the approval of the consent agenda, which includes routine personnel, minutes from our previous board meeting, and policies EBBA and EBBB. Directors, are there any items that you would like to pull for separate discussion and vote? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
Could you please call the vote?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. You've just approved the consent agenda as presented. The next business in order is the 24-25 superintendent evaluation by the Board of Education of Superintendent Dr. Anna Cole. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share comments or ask questions. Director DeFreitas, would you like to begin?
Are we just sharing this with the public comments or questions?
Any
or-
comments that you have about it? And at the end, what we've done historically is read our final comments aloud.
Got it. Well, I appreciate it. I just want to offer appreciation to the directors who have moved forward to create consistency in the superintendent evaluation. I think that it is a great model at the highest level in our district that we're all striving to be held accountable for the good of our students and our community. And so I think that, Director Kuhlenberg and Ramirez and Tytler have gone through a lot to make sure that this system is transparent and efficient and effective. And I think there's room to grow and we can continue to tweak, but I'm glad we have it. And Dr. Cole, thank you so much for all of your work this year. I think that'll be reflected in what we share. It's been a tremendously challenging year. And yet I think one of the things that's been most impressive is you have continued to move forward on things like the strategic plan, which when you're dealing with immediate challenges, in your face crises, such as the financial issues that we've been looking at, it is very easy to lose sight of those long-term goals and then find out in 18 months that we have to now make up ground on all fronts. And I think you've done a tremendous job of moving all of the things forward, even as you solve for the immediate. So I appreciate that.
Director Tyler.
I would like to start by thanking you, Dr. Cole, for being here with us in our district and for all of the personable elements that you lend to your position. I appreciate your integrity, your openness, the way that you work with others to come to an accord, and how you make people feel comfortable being around you, asking questions, feeling that they're part of the system and not afraid to share opinions. And I think it's really important that you continue to lead in this way. And I thank you for your interpersonal communication style that has, I think, made people around you feel that way. And when you look at the data from community and from staff and from teachers, is overwhelmingly positive. And I think that's a great testament to you. And so I appreciate that. And as far as our board, I want to say thank you to Director After and Director Kuhlenberg for helping to compile and put together the report and the time that you took to do that, and all the board directors for the time for your comments and evaluations to make up the whole evaluation. And also the community members and staff members who responded to the survey.
Director After.
Great, yeah, thanks. I would just like to say that doing the superintendent evaluation is an important part of the board's job, and that the public trusts 5 volunteers to do this. I take that responsibility really seriously and was glad to be able to be part of your review this year. I think Director Tyler said it well. The community really came out to complete the survey. Doing a public professional evaluation of your job is my personal nightmare. So I really admire your like just transparency throughout the process, and I'm glad that the community clearly supports your leadership. I'm sure it sounds like we'll read the comments here, so I won't summarize them in advance, but I do think I'm just really impressed by your leadership during this tumultuous year. I imagine it wasn't the year that you were expecting to get when you took on the job, but I'm really glad you've been here for it and you're our person.
Director Ramirez.
I'll echo all the comments from my colleagues, and I did just want to mention that, this is the responsibility of the board to evaluate the superintendent, and we do, like Director After mentioned, rely on the community to help us to really be able to answer the survey. I think we are finally getting into the cadence of having this yearly, and so I did want to note that there was a sharp decline in participation this year over the last 2, a drop of over 50%. And so, as much as we do appreciate the time that the community has provided responses, we also want to continue to push the community to answer the survey, because it does help us as a board to be able to understand, how our superintendent is doing in the community. And then I just want to again give credit to our colleagues. To be able to do this a 3rd year is really, I feel really exceptional to be part of the system that is creating the process. And so I appreciate that commitment from all of us to be able to turn in our evaluations and to be able to work together. Thank you to Director After and Director Kohlenberg for making this document happen.
I'll round us out by echoing everyone's comments first and foremost, and providing a few comments before I read our final thoughts as a board. And I just want to explain briefly for the public what the process is. So the process for the evaluation is that Dr. Cole completes a self-evaluation. Each board member completes an evaluation. We utilize the presentation that was done. We utilized the presentation that was done about Dr. Cole's goals, which was a new piece of our evaluation this year, and something that I was very grateful that Dr. Cole was willing to add in, because I think it's an important component of a superintendent evaluation to have some measurable goals. So thank you for your willingness to jump in on that, even in this year when there's so much else going on, and for being open and transparent with the community by presenting progress on those in our January meeting. And then we try to compile that. We do compile that into one final document that we presented to Dr. Cole. I personally am very grateful to have had the opportunity to work closely with you over this last year and a half so far. Has it been that long? I'm guessing. It's been a privilege to be able to be up close and see how you jumped into this role and really handled things tactfully, gracefully, with humility, consistently, and in a way that honors the voice of all of those in our community. So that's been an important thing for me to see and to witness. And I'm just very grateful that you're here and that you've been willing to take on one thing after another, after another, after another, and that you've maintained the stamina to keep it going. So thank you. Does anyone else have any other comments that they want to add in before I read our final comments? So these final comments are included in the board memo in the agenda. And these were the final comments that the board agreed on to present to Dr. Cole.
I would like to add just one thing really
Go right
quickly.
ahead.
When you were talking about the process on how we go about it, I
Yeah.
think just to add that before you said that Dr. Cole does her own self-evaluation, we all do our self-evaluation, and then there's the community and the teachers through the survey. But before the board did their evaluations, we read through Dr. Cole's evaluations and the comments from the survey
Yes.
before we made our evaluations.
Yeah,
Also.
thank you for clarifying that. Good.
Thank you.
Overall, Dr. Cole shows up as a leader for students, staff, and families of the district every day. Despite the challenges she faces and the slow path to progress, we believe that she is moving the district forward in a positive direction. She has developed tremendously as a leader in the past year, and we are impressed by how she has managed to navigate complex issues and ultimately learned and grown as a result. The board feels that Dr. Cole's interpersonal communication skills are exceptional and that she makes those around her feel seen and heard. She has worked hard over this last year to build trust with multiple employee groups, community partners, and various stakeholders. She understands the importance of that work, and we encourage her to make time to build those connections throughout the community and to focus on expanding those connections with the Latino community across the district. We have been impressed by Dr. Cole's ability to manage the finance department this year and also the transition on health insurance. These were two complex issues that she led the district through with humility, transparency, and a forward-thinking attitude. As she is able to move past these challenges, we are hopeful that she will now have the capacity to expand her knowledge of instructional topics and supports and be prepared to address the ongoing and unacceptable achievement gap between Latino students and white students. Dr. Cole has tackled and resolved some massive issues this year that move us closer to achieving operational excellence at the district office. And we are grateful that she continues to tie her work to the strategic priorities identified by the community. We encourage her to continue to use that plan as a guiding light and goalpost as she moves through the day-to-day work of being superintendent. Her work ethic and ability to keep things moving has been admirable, and while we commend her tenacity and her unrelenting drive, we encourage her to make sure that the pace at which she is going is sustainable. This role is highly demanding. We also want to ensure that she prioritizes time for professional development and meaningful coaching, especially as it relates to time management and delegation, so that she can be as effective as possible in this role. We are grateful for Dr. Cole's leadership and are optimistic for the future of our district under Dr. Cole. She has proven that she is committed to the students, staff, and communities of the Roaring Fork School District, and we look forward to continuing to support her in her role as superintendent. Thank you, Dr. Cole. The next business in order is discussion on policies GBAB, GBGD. Actually, do you have any comments you want to make about the evaluation? I feel like we skipped a critical step there.
I mean, I'm grateful that it's such an opportunity to get to, and a privilege to get that feedback from the community and staff members, and the thought and care that the board invested into this evaluation is a real gift. And I felt as the public knows, that we had an executive session to discuss the evaluation the meeting last week. And I was really struck by what felt like really strong alignment with the pushes and the findings that the board had. And I think it's really a testament to how close you all are to the work and how much you are invested and see what we are doing. Of course, that comes through me as your, kind of key point of contact. And so I just felt that the evaluation process, the outcomes, the pushes, we're incredibly aligned, and it feels really good that it feels like we see similar things and are working in the same direction. And so it remains a privilege to get to serve in this role and serve this board and this community. And it feels really great that it seems like we are in tight alignment of where we need to go. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now the next business in order is discussion on policies GBAB, GBGD, GBGL, and GCOE. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share comments or ask questions. We'll begin with Director After this time, if you're ready.
Yeah,
Great.
I'm ready. I reviewed the policies and I don't have any questions. They all seemed, the first 3 seemed like pretty minor edits, and on the evaluation of the evaluators, quite a mouthful. I frankly don't feel that I understand it quite well enough to make any substantive comments. So I trust the staff if those changes are what you all want to see.
Great, thank you. Director Ramirez.
I just wanted to note that on GCOE, during policy planning, we did have some additions, which on the final 2 paragraphs of that section. And then I just wanted to know, although I don't see it now, I'm not sure if it was this one. I thought there was a discussion regarding adding if one of these was included in the CDC. But I don't see that reflected on here. So I guess I would defer to the team if you guys felt that that was best to leave that language out.
None of these policies have crossover with the CBC. There were some that policy committee reviewed and are under review by the RFCEA.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Director DeFreitas.
Yeah, not a lot of questions. You hit on all of mine. How does it interact with what we have in the contract, just because there's a review section, but I appreciate the thought on that already. And then I think I'm trying to figure out, I didn't get a chance to really dig in, so I'll hold my question until later. Sorry.
Director Tyler.
I didn't have any questions.
My only follow-up question was, what employee groups have reviewed these, or who have you consulted with? I know these are outside of the scope of the CBC, but historically G policies have been taken through IBB. So I was curious if we've done any of that.
We didn't with this set of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember my question.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm finished.
I'm a little confused. Maybe I just didn't have the context. The District Personnel Performance Evaluation Council. Could you all explain that just a little bit more?
It's called the 1170 Council. I forgot which statute it is, but it is intended to include, sorry, I had a comment here, right? Has to include 1 teacher, administrator, parent, and a person who doesn't have a principal and a parent. And a person who does not have a child in the school, and is intended to review the processes through which there's evaluations or any changes, especially that come down from I shouldn't say come down from state, that come from the state, and ensure implementation. There's a lot of overlap with the membership of the District Accountability Committee. And so in the interest of not creating yet another committee, my question was whether it can be a part of the topics that the DAC discusses as well, once the membership is better established.
It's a statutorily defined council.
Okay. And it reviews,
Processes, like,
Yeah.
is everyone doing it? What are some discussions you might have about how you split the percentages?
If you jump to board policy B, D, B is in Betty, D is in David, F is in Frederick.
oh yeah, I see.
You'll
Okay.
see that statutory council requirement.
Okay.
Yeah, it's linked in that comment, in my comment as well.
Yeah, I think in terms of implementation of this, we're hoping to support the DAC to be able to do this work.
Have any other questions? I'm gonna move us to our 5 minutes of open comment question then, if anybody has anything. Okay. Being nothing else, we'll wrap this one up. Thank you all. The next business in order is action on a resolution supporting the grant application for a grant from the Garfield County Federal Mineral Lease District and the completion of Roaring Fork High School School-Based Health Center. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution supporting the grant application for a grant from the Garfield County Federal Mineral Lease District and the completion of Roaring Fork High School School-Based Health Center?
I make a motion to move that the board approve the resolution supporting the grant application for a grant from the Garfield County Federal Mineral Lease District for the completion of Roaring Fork High School School-Based Health Center as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
We'll now each have 2 minutes for questions and comments and entertain any intervening motions to amend. Director Ramirez?
So, I know this was added to our agenda, last minute, but I wanted to just ask, because I feel like we've had conversations about school-based health centers. I just wanted to ask, I guess, like, what is our team's thoughts on like us asking for this money for this center and its use in our school? Like, what is our commitment here?
Great question. We do not, I mean, in our efforts and priorities to make sure that students and families can access resources through our schools in rural communities, we have partnerships with organizations like Mountain Family for school-based health. I would say it's part of our commitment in terms of access and equity that we have these kinds of partnerships. We do not invest any financial resources in this partnership at all. And in turn, what we receive where we have school-based health centers is incredible access for students to vaccinations and routine well child checks and sports physicals and support for managed care, and Mountain Family couldn't be a better partner for that. And especially in the way that they provide comprehensive care through their hub sites and their sites for all ages. And so there's very minimal investment on our part to support the school-based health centers. We create space. And I will name that in the plan that you were able to see through the staff memo, this project to create a better space for the Roaring Fork High School School-Based Health Center. The plan that we have right now has us investing no cash at all. There is some, I would say, time and resources from leadership. Director of Student Family Services, Kelly Medina, manages the partnership with Mountain Family. Chief Operating Officer Ben Baumfalk is really managing this project as it turns into kind of construction. We actually were able to leverage a generous donation from the Carbondale Education Foundation to actually outsource the grant writing. So we're not even doing that. That's not a drain on our staff time because of CEF's investment in this. And so it's a minimal lift for us for what I would say is a pretty significant benefit for the students who are accessing the school-based health centers. The reason this is, I would say, a priority for Fork right now, I think the reorganization of the space feels well aligned to the strategic goals of the leadership team at Roaring Fork High School. They are behind this project. They would like to reclaim the space that the school-based health center is currently in, and they see this renovation of the space to do the work. It has a lot of wins for them, both in terms of instructional space and then better use of the space for athletics. So they see this as a real win. I think as a district, we're behind the partnership, we're supporting Fork, and we're not investing any resources in it. So I hope that's kind of a long-winded answer.
And we don't have any reservations over it and ending up like basalt.
No, we don't. I mean, we were really disappointed to lose the school-based health center in Basalt. If we had to lose it anywhere, it's the hub sites are very accessible. The Mountain Family Health Center hub sites are very accessible. And so that has been, I would say, we've been able to find workarounds to losing the health center there. Mountain Family doesn't have a hub site in Carbondale. So it does, I think we have continuously checked in with Mountain Family on their commitment because, even though we're not investing cash, it is space and time, and have received very consistent and steady support from Mountain Family that they are all in at Fork on this project and ready to support and invest and stand up the health center for the foreseeable future. Yeah.
Director DeFreitas?
Yeah, I had the same question as Director Ramirez. I know that Mountain Family is definitely dealing with a rapidly changing landscape in funding for public health and remain a critical resource throughout our valley. So I'm glad we can support them in this way. I think just want to make sure that we're looking long-term for continuity and making sure that we're partnering in a way that's most productive to help them as well as our students. I'm really excited about the Carbondale Education Foundation really showing up in this way. I know that was a huge drive in this community and really just wanted to appreciate the people who led that and have made it come to life so much that it could be such a critical leveraging partner in this funding. I fully support the resolution. I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Director Tyler?
I would like to say I also very much support the resolution. I think what Mountain Family Health Centers can lend to Roaring Fork community is very important. And so I very much support that. And I guess just from the earlier conversation, my question would be, if we don't get this grant that we're applying for, where do we stand? Like, where are we now and what does it look like without this grant?
It's a great question. I think that the project was kind of on hold before we knew that this grant was happening. And we were trying to gauge, I think ask to your questions initially, Director Ramirez, like, what's our priority around this project? How important is this? And I think we were kind of in a holding pattern, because we had so much further to go before we saw this grant. And so grateful for Lindsay Henschel, who really identified it, and then also is providing a lot of enthusiasm and support. So, if we don't get it, I'm not sure. I mean, I think we'll circle up as a team, and that looks like Mountain Family, and it looks a lot like involving the leadership at Roaring Fork High School, Kelly Medina and the Family Resource Center, and then, either Ben or I from the admin team to take stock of where we are. And we've tried to be really transparent with funders, including the Colorado Health Foundation, CEF, that at this time, Roaring Fork Schools does not have cash to infuse into the project to kind of finish, if there were any remaining gaps. And so that, that's the reality that would still face us if we don't get this grant, is that I don't know that it's at this time, given the challenges that we're facing financially, that we would see this as an area that we're going to make up a $200,000 or $300,000 gap from Roaring Fork School District funds. So I'm not sure where we would land if this doesn't come through, but we'd probably pause.
And so as we're looking at like building out this classroom space, is Mountain Family Health Center like still working within the schools then, or like, and what is their space now? Like, how are they interacting with students now?
It's not ideal. If you think about walking into Roaring Fork High School and heading down towards the auxiliary gym, and you go down that hallway, you go all the way to the end of the hallway, and there is a coach's office. And that was what it was initially meant to be. So it's a very small office, and there's a restroom behind it. It's a very small space. That's where the clinic is. There's kind of a chair to wait outside. It's not ideal for a clinic, either in terms of student access or community access. It's not great in terms of all the services that Mountain Family is ready to provide in that space. They also are providing school-based mental health more over in the counseling wing at Roaring Fork High School. And so this would really condense all of that. So it's really not ideal. And I think one of the things we learned from the Glenwood Springs High School renovation a couple of years ago was that it was maybe a similar, less than ideal situation, but man, when we really renovated the entrance of Glenwood Springs High School to move the clinic much more accessible and available to students, usage just skyrocketed. And so we're optimistic that this renovation will increase access and services that can be provided. So the clinic is there and it's open. And to be honest, the partnership with Mountain Family over the last few years with our health services team has just dramatically transformed our vaccination compliance, especially access for students who are newly immigrated to healthcare services quickly and accessibly and affordably because of the partnerships at Roaring Fork and at our other high schools. So the work is happening. I think it just could get a lot better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Director After?
Great. This is exciting. Happy to see this. So my questions are just for clarification, not because of any concerns. I guess to build on Kenny's question, what if you get a partial funding? Because it's a pretty big ask. I was just looking at their website, and I think even this is a pretty big ask.
You know, I think that some of the things that we've talked about with this team, if we feel like we get closer to the finish line and to the total cost, and there's still small gaps, is that there are some local funders that we haven't reached out to yet that, like, for example, Aspen Community Foundation came in to help us kind of close the gap on the Glenwood Springs project a couple of years ago. So there's some other options and other folks that we could reach out to if we are short of the total projected costs and somehow, get partially funded. I think there are still some options, but we would definitely pause to try to come up with a different strategy to close the gap.
Do you know if the team's been in touch with the decision makers at the Mineral East District? Do they know it's coming, or?
I don't know the answer to that. That's a great question.
Okay, and then why do we have to approve this?
It's part of the grant application process.
Do we
is
have
that
to approve all grant applications, or like what's the level?
Just this one. It depends on the
Oh.
grant, whether it requires a board support and kind of the board awareness of the grant. I would say it's not typical of all the grants that we have. They typically don't come in front of the board. But this one, as we were finalizing the pieces and putting them together with our grant writer, it was one of those like, oh my goodness, we need a board resolution that they're aware of this application.
But is that our requirement or the funders requirement?
The funders requirement.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Mhm.
Okay, well, good luck.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll let you know.
I don't have any additional questions. Everything that I was curious about was addressed, and I hope it all works out and we get these funds. So we'll have 5 minutes if anybody else has anything else or any other intervening motions.
I just wanted to add a comment because I don't know that we've ever received data to say how usage looks at any of these centers. So I think that would be interesting for us to see eventually. But I do think it would be very important, should we not receive the grant, that obviously the board be notified what next steps are going to be.
For sure. We receive every year, since Mountain Family has picked up the contract, like an annual report from them that really goes through the usage. And so we can absolutely pass that on and share that with the board moving forward.
Okay, seeing no intervening motions. Can you please call the vote?
Aye.
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 I,
Motion passes. Up next, we have two possible future agenda topics proposed by Director Ramirez. Director Ramirez, I'm not sure if you still wanted to discuss the first one. The second one, no, you don't want to discuss the first one. Okay, so we'll strike that. The second one is a request for state demographer presentation at a future board work session. I'm gonna explain a little bit about that and then we'll.
Yeah, I reached out to the state demographer. I've been on a panel discussion with them before and I found what they shared to be very interesting. I had a meeting with them last week. Yes, last week, I think, Wednesday, and just sort of followed up to make sure that if we met with her, you know, that it would be aligned to what we were have been hoping to get, which would be like birth rates, projections for, you know, our valley. I think, you know, obviously just being able to see what the impact in all of the different counties is gonna be. And so I figured if there was anything that we wanted to follow up and like ask her, I think there was workforce was one of them. I'm trying to remember what else was part of it, but I just think it would be a good use of our time, especially as we look into budgeting and hoping to get more information on how we can use the data that they're collecting for the purpose of having a better budget process.
I'm gonna propose that we just go into 5 minutes of board discussion about it versus 2 minutes each. No one opposes that. Okay. Is there a cost for the service?
what are you hoping to get out of the state demographer that we didn't get out of our demographer, and why the moving on from what we have been presented?
I don't know that. I don't think that it's about getting anything. Like, I'm not hoping that we like somehow get a different number, but I think that because this is like their work, like their sole purpose is collecting this information on. And I think they have more like historical data for our valley. I think that's important to have a follow-up conversation with her and what she can present to us. You know, I think even in just my conversation with her, I felt like she was projecting that she probably had different information that she could provide to us. And I think that's important for us to be able to have, especially if it leads to us possibly making that part of our process instead of hiring them. You know, private demographer. And I also think there was a little bit of like understanding that, you know, this is her job as opposed to like her business. And you know, I also think that I don't know how many people like I think that because it was like specific to our area, like I was very clear to say like these are the cities, these are the counties, like what can you tell us about, you know, what you guys are looking at like 5 years out and 10 years out. Like I feel like there was more to work with because there was more information. And she did say like you're welcome to go onto our website and look up to what we already have and what you can access, which I would encourage anyone to do that because there is so much data. It's insane. But I do think that having the opportunity to meet with them, I think it would even be helpful to us as board members to really understand like projections. So
I'm curious, Dr. Cole, not to put you on the spot, but we know budgeting is going to be super tight in the next few years and that we don't have room to be off dramatically, especially since we are declining enrollment. Do you feel that there would be a value of having like a second opinion on demographics or a second take? Obviously, we have the information and the data from Shannon Bingham, but because we are so tight, do you feel like it would be of value?
You know, I mean, I'll be honest, Chief Chicoine and Dr. Park and Joel Hathaway and I actually ran our own numbers, like because we wanted a second opinion on kind of enrollment forecasts. And so we were using some different formulas that we've used historically to project. So yes, absolutely, that number really matters. And we are very interested in different calculations, and we've done some internally as well. I mean, one of my thoughts on this would be, I mean, would it make sense in terms of time to share our full report from Shannon Bingham with the state demographer, ask for an initial assessment? Does she agree? Are there things that are missing? Are there things that we should consider? I wonder if we ask for an initial read and some data, and if we feel like, oh, that's complicated, let's dig in, let's dedicate some time to get her here. I mean, I wonder if we start with that. You know, I would hate to block an hour and for her to say, well, this is great and it's accurate. And so I'm wondering if we start with that, get something back. I mean, we can drive that because I have the contact information, share that with her, share with all of you the update, and we could circle back as to whether it feels like we need to dig in a little more or whether it, you know, validates or presents anything new.
Yeah, I feel like that's sort of where I was leaning in that. I'm sure she does have zoomed in data on our region, which would be valuable, but I don't personally know that we need to have her here. I've seen her present too. She's very engaging. She's actually a great communicator. I just would, like you said, I'd like to, maybe we can get access to that better information and then see if we need more. I don't know. I don't personally feel like bringing her in here would maybe be the best use of her time when they can share the data with us. And then if we're confused or we see massive discrepancies between our consultant's version and hers, then perhaps that would be, like you said, have her to fill the gap.
Yeah, and I will say, like, I do think this would fit more as a work session, because I think we want to be able to engage. So, you know, again, like I was pretty clear with her to say, like, you don't have to be here in person, like we could do it via Zoom. But I think just for the sake of like her wanting to engage with us, like she offered to come out here, and I, you know, if there was a need, then I obviously would want us to take that opportunity. I just wanted to mention, so the four topics that we did talk about were birth rates, youth, migration, and workforce. So I do think that, you know, if there's other things that we want to follow up with her on, like I think I think she's kind of surprised that like a school district reached out. Because I just think like we typically always hire people. But I think that's why she was also really willing to do it. So I would be fine. I think it's a great idea to follow up with her and to say like, hey, we want to share this with you. Like, can you share your thoughts on it? Like, is there anything you would add? And again, you know, like her and her team want to be to check out here. Like, I think it would be great to be able to engage in person, because sometimes in our work sessions, it is really hard to have somebody over Zoom because of broadband issues. So, I mean, if she's willing and available, it would be great to have her in person.
Okay, so it sounds like the plan moving forward is you'll reach out, we'll share the data that we have, see if there's anything additional to add. We can circle back up, look at our work sessions that we have left and determine if it makes sense to have her come for a work session, if we have time, if it's a value.
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
I would hate for us to do all this work with the assumption that we're a declining enrollment district to find out that there's a second opinion that would have changed some of that. So I think it's worthwhile. It sounds like we're paying through the service through the state. So, right. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah.
And I will just add that I did mention the 3/12 meeting to her just in case as a placeholder, because, you know, I'm sure her schedule was also really busy. And again, like if I didn't feel, and I did share this with Director Klulenberg, I didn't feel like this necessarily had to be a work session, but if it was something that we could have like a one-off where we need just to hear her presentation, or I don't know, something like, I think if we find that there is something we can learn from that, I would want to be a part of that. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to do that and bringing it forward to us. All right, the next business in order is board updates and appreciations. Back to Director Tytler.
I don't have any updates. It's been a short or a long week, I guess. But as far as appreciations, I would like to appreciate Dr. Park. I appreciate your wealth of knowledge that you bring to the position that you're in. I appreciate when you are asked questions, you have a breadth of knowledge, you have an understanding, you have a vision for being able to talk to those issues. And I feel comforted of getting a good response when questions are asked of you. And in addition to that, I would just like to say that the response that I hear from the school district community, the teachers, is very overwhelmingly positive of what a valuable asset you are, how you bring teams together, how they rely on you and they have confidence in you. And so thank you for the work that you do for us.
Thank you. Director After?
Great. I wanted to give the team kudos for the snow day call. I didn't hear any complaints about it, and I thought it was, I know I'm sure there's a lot happening in the background, but I thought it was elegant how the 2-hour delay rolled into a snow day. I don't know if that was intentional, but it seemed like it worked. So thank you. And that was a lot of snow. So I thought that was smart. I attended the DAC meeting for Director Kuhlenberg on Tuesday night for a portion of it. And so thanks to Brian and Sarah and Maddie on the DAC for hosting like an information session for potential DAC members. They had some decent turnout and hopefully those folks follow through. And then I wanted to comment that I saw kind of through the grapevine a parent survey for students on IEPs for SPED, and I haven't heard anyone talk about that officially, but hopefully that's getting out and that's great. If it is, if anyone's listening, I'm sure there's ways for you to find that or it's being pushed out to the appropriate channels. But I was really grateful to see that happening in a really professional way. And then last is a kudos and thanks to the 4th grade at Crystal River for taking all those kiddos to sunlight the last couple days. I know they had a great time. I think the group today maybe had more parents join than students. I don't know. There were a lot of chaperones who signed up, including my husband. So they had a really good time. Thanks for making that happen.
Thank you. Director Ramirez?
Yeah, I'll echo the snow day. I thought it was rolled out well. To have the message the day before, to have the message in the morning, and I think I agree with Director After. This is the first time that it wasn't like we would be seeing people were mad at us. So I appreciate that. It's funny because I spoke to Director Kuhlenberg before the meeting today because I wanted to share some comments, and I always struggle, I think, in moments like this because I do think like we have had so many things happen at the Frankfurt School District over my what feels very long tenure. And in this moment, I just want to appreciate my colleagues because I have served with I've served with different board members, and I think just being able to have consistency and cadence and a commitment to serve all students from the board, where we are aligned on centering students, on closing the achievement gap, on having better systems. I think it's all been really important work, and it's been really hard work. And I had this like whole speech written out, but I think I would save that for another day. And I'm just giving gratitude for all the work and the commitment from my colleagues, because I do think it takes courage to be a board member, especially post-pandemic, and to like stay true to wanting all students to succeed and uphold the district mission. So my gratitude today.
Director DeFreitas?
Yep, my appreciation was around snow day, but it was definitely related to the grounds crews that were out clearing everything. it got icy. It was heavy, it was wet, it froze, it melted, it froze again. And I know that even transportation, it just complicates your day so much to have to work around those elements. And they already have a lot going on. So that's my appreciation. I don't have a lot of updates since last week.
I don't have any updates since last week either. A couple appreciations. Wanted to give a specific appreciation to Miss McCann, who's our PE teacher at BS, who took all of the kids cross-country skiing this week during PE class in the fields around the schools. She's brave and created a core memory for all those kids. So it was really cool. And just wanted to give her a shout out. And then my other appreciation, Director Tytler said, is for Dr. Park. And I wanted to specifically thank you for your work around data and driving a data culture in your schools. I think that it's heady work and it can sometimes be misunderstood, but it's incredibly important for us to be able to clearly see where we are so that we can continue to drive forward. And so I just wanted to thank you. I think seeing that data dashboard today really brought it to reality for me, that all of this, like, you really marched it forward with fidelity year over year. And it's coming to fruition, like it's coming around where we can see it consistently. So thank you for that. And for being a part of the team here. I think it's echo all the sentiments that Director Tytler said. I'm very grateful to have you here. All right. If there's no further business and no objection, this meeting will be adjourned. It is 7:58 p.m.